I was in a meeting. I was just kind of hanging out, being a fly on the wall, and I was watching this manager interact with his people. So he slams his hand on his desk and stands up, and in a loud voice, he says, "I keep telling you guys I have an open door policy and no one's using it."
This sounds like a stupid question.
Probably is, because, yeah, go ahead. Skilled managers equals high morale, which equals all that cool stuff that you cannot pay for and you can't punish for.
When you close off that feedback channel, you are not going to be able to hear the truth.
In the first microseconds, your brain can't tell the difference between physical danger and what we call social danger.
I'm pissed off at you.
Me, specifically?
Well, just because you're my boss and all.
Employees tend to get promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. Go forward and don't suck.
Hey, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Managing with Mind in the Heart podcast,
where we help managers not suck at being managers.
My name's Ethan Nash, and I am here with my father.
His father, Michael Nash.
Let's go back to that story.
Yeah, let's do.
That was interesting because he had an open door policy, yet people weren't using it.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what managers are supposed to do? Have an open door policy? What's going on here?
And that's the point of our podcast today, dude. It's the difference between sort of technical management skills, right? Like have an open door policy versus what we call adaptive skills, which in this case is his ability to be approachable, his ability to treat his people with respect. So we're going to separate a couple different kinds of skills here.
So yeah, I mean, there's multiple different kinds of skills, and I think some managers, some leaders get caught up on the very technical skills it takes to be a manager. Like you said, how to run a meeting, how to have how to have one-on-one meetings, have an open door policy,
how to write a performance review.
But there's more layers to being a successful leader. And so let's talk about those different types of skills that it takes to be a truly successful leader.
Yeah, for a manager to be successful, let's kind of back up here. There's three kinds of skills that everybody is using every day in the workplace. Three kinds of skills. Let's start at the top. And what you can picture here is a pyramid, a triangle, and we're going to take the top part of the triangle, which is the smallest part area-wise, right? We're going to call that job-specific skills. These are the skills that you're hired for. For example, this is the engineer's ability to draft out a engineer-related thing.
Clearly, we're not engineers, but for engineers out there, you know
what I mean. You know what you do.
These are the skills that are going to be oftentimes on your actual job description.
Yeah, this is an accountant's ability to account. This is a bus driver. I got one. A bus driver's ability to drive a bus. I got that one down.
There we go.
Okay. So this is the lawyer's ability to write a brief, right? Job specific. These are the skills that if you were to change careers, you would not take this skill with you to that next career.
Now, the second layer of skills are transferable skills. Now, these are the skills that if you were to change jobs, these would come in handy, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, you would bring them with you. What would be some example of those?
Not just change jobs, because if you change jobs in your own career, you're probably still talking about
change careers.
Yeah, change careers. There you go. So my ability to use a computer keyboard, right? I can use a computer. I'll use that in lots of careers, right?
Mm-hmm.
My ability to do public speaking.
Right, exactly. So that's pretty, I think, self-explanatory.
Yeah. So let's talk about the bottom layer now. Now, this is the layer that if you're looking at the diagram, right, this is like probably about 50% of the real estate in that triangle, right? This is called adaptive skills. Now, here's the punchline here, meaning these are the skills that you brought with you from childhood, and they make or break your success in almost every part of your life.
Let's say that again. They make or break your success in almost every part of your life. What do you mean by that?
Well, these are the skills, again, that you brought with you from childhood, and they are going to be, they're going to lead to either success or something much less than success in every part of your life. For example, and I think just listing a couple of these up front will help us kind of get our head around this. Here's one I mentioned a couple podcasts ago. If I get up the guts to give you feedback about something that's bothering me about your behavior, and you punish me by being defensive, What am I going to do different next time?
I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch that hot stove again. Now think about this. My inability to receive feedback non-defensively, that's going to impact my relationship with my boss, with my employees, with my wife, with you, my kid, right? This is my friends. If I can't take feedback non-defensively, people are going to stop giving me feedback. I'm going to become unapproachable. I'm not going to hear the truth, and that's going to impact the trust and respect in every one of those relationships.
And I think that's a big point right there of you will not be able to hear the truth from people. And let's just take a workplace context, although this applies to basically every walk of life. In the workplace, if you can't hear the truth, you're not going to become a better manager. You're not going to get better at your job in a lot of ways because nobody's going to tell you where you're being sucky at.
Exactly. You're stuck in this suck zone where you don't even know you're in it.
Please
right?
don't say suck zone.
Okay, but you don't even know you're in it, right? You literally don't know that you're failing because no one's going to tell you that, right? Let's do another one. My ability to listen so you actually feel heard, right? There was a study one time, and I wish I had it here at my fingertips, but they had these teenagers having a conversation with an adult, one-on-one conversation. And the control group, half these kids, they were having a conversation with the adult. And it was just a boring, tedious, I should say mundane conversation. They weren't talking about anything important. The other group were talking one-on-one with an adult, same exact kind of conversation, but this time the adult was listening using a specific set of listening skills. And later on, they interviewed these kids and had them describe the adult they were talking to. It's the kids in the second group who said, that person cared about me. And there was nothing in the conversation that would have indicated caring. The only reason that young person believed they were cared about was because they were listened to with actual listening skills. So that is another adaptive skill, the ability to listen so people feel heard, and that's going to impact every single relationship you have.
Right. I tend to think of these adaptive skills as kind of a periodic table of elements of skills, right? You have all these different elements within the table, which are your adaptive skills. And if you want to make different compounds, which are the skills that are further up in that triangle we described, communication skills or what have you, you need to first have those elements at the most basic level, which are your adaptive skills.
I have a great example of that. That's perfectly said. Here's the thing. For example, I want to be able to lead a good meeting, right? As a manager, I want to lead the kind of meeting that it's effective. No one feels disenfranchised. We get good work done. We make decisions. Well, there on one level are some specific kind of technical management skills thrown in there, right? How to lead a good meeting, how to write an agenda, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of adaptive skills attached to that ability to lead a good meeting, as you said, a whole compound, or what word did you use?
It's a periodic table of elements. There's different compounds, different molecules.
Yeah, you mix those together different ways. I'm not a scientist, and neither are you, and we sound like idiots right now. But here's the thing, right? Leading a good meeting, right? I need to be able to not interrupt. I need to be able to listen to people so they feel heard. I need to be able to air traffic control the meeting, which means sometimes know how to get someone to use less airtime and how to get someone else to use more airtime.
You stay emotionally stable, emotionally calm.
Not get reactive.
Because meetings get heated. We all know that.
Absolutely. Not get reactive. Like you said, emotionally calm. Learn how I need to be able to kind of pivot and be flexible in the moment, yet I also need to help us stay on track. I mean, there's a whole bunch of pieces here that we could put in the category of adaptive skills.
So let's bring this back to that opening story, right? The manager that slammed his fist down on the table or hand or whatever he did and said, I have an open door policy. Why is nobody using it? The point he was missing was, he had that larger skill.
The technical skill of having an open door policy. Sure.
Right. But he was missing what?
Approachability. He was missing a calmness in his voice. He was missing an empathy in his attitude. He was missing asking a good question to find out what's really going on. You could list probably 10 adaptive skills that he was not using in that moment.
Now, obviously, that's a pretty extreme example, and it's pretty clear, what's going on there and what that manager was missing. But I'll tell you what, so in the 5-day course that we teach called Managing with Mind and Heart, And the first day we end up talking about adaptive skills. And we sometimes get pushback of, this is just some touchy-feely subject. It's not practical. It's just some hippie feel-good crap. Let me guess, next we're going to do trust falls and sit in a circle and do kumbayas.
Yep, we don't do that.
So why is this not just a touchy-feely subject? I mean, it seems obvious at this point, but let's elaborate.
Yeah, it's absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is, I'm on my second glass of wine right now. I just want to point that out. So I got a little tongue-tied right there.
That's all right.
Yeah, it might happen a couple more times in this podcast. But, hey,
it's evening time, by the way.
It's 9 a.m., right? It's, no. Yeah, here's the thing. Your adaptive skills is, you might have already, as you're listening, thought, well, what's the difference between this and emotional IQ? It's pretty much the same thing. I mean, there's a couple nuances difference. I think to answer your question, I want to read this definition that I came across recently about a definition of emotional intelligence. It says the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically, right? And so this is not a touchy-feely, no big deal, extra thing. This is, for example, this is the way I show up. This is the way I impact people. This is the way I react.
The way you treat other people.
The way I treat people. The way I make people feel. This is almost everything. Like let's be honest. I can maybe not know how to run a good meeting, but know how to show caring and respect and empathy, and I'm going to be an awesome boss, right? Even without some of these more technical management skills. So I'll just say this again. I think this is almost everything.
Right. I think to talk about and learn the technical management skills before understanding adaptive skills and emotional IQ is to put the cart before the horse. And I mean, for the sake of the conversation, these adaptive skills we're talking about and emotional IQ skills, they are very, very closely related, if not just married to each other. One of probably the most groundbreaking books on emotional IQ, I think it's just called Emotional IQ by Daniel Goleman, who is a really renowned researcher. I want to talk about one study that I found in that book that I actually just recently reread. So Goleman found that students with higher levels of empathy and emotional IQ skills in general seem to get better grades, even if their peers were just as smart, right? So we're talking about on an IQ level, even if their peers had higher IQ. So basically, he concluded that this was because they could manage their emotions and feelings better, right? For example, being bored, but still doing your homework, right? And perform better in social settings, like knowing when to speak and knowing when to be quiet in a class. And he points to some other studies that also relate to the workplace. But the point here is that emotional IQ is actually more important than IQ, right? Your intellectual IQ or whatever you want to call it, in the long term when it comes to success in school and success in your career.
Absolutely. If you look at all the studies on EQ, which is emotional IQ, and IQ, every study is going to tell you that it's emotional IQ that is much more indicative of future success.
Right. And I mean, we know from the famous, right, marshmallow experiments, kids who can better discipline themselves and manage their feelings at a young age tend to perform better later in life.
Is this experiment where they shoved marshmallows in kids' ears and noses?
No. What?
I just made that up. I have no idea what you're talking about.
What type of sick thing do you watch? What I'm talking about, so basically an experiment where they put kids in a room and they put a marshmallow in front of them.
Oh, delayed gratification.
And they tell the kid, you can have this marshmallow now, or if you wait, I don't know what it is, like 10, 15 minutes, you can have more marshmallows, right? And they observed the kids, and they found that the kids that were able to wait for that 10 to 15 minutes or whatever it was to get more marshmallows, they actually then tracked them later in life in school and their career, and they found that those kids actually had more career success in however way they measured that.
Yeah, I remember that now, yeah.
And that's just, I like using that experiment to demonstrate the importance of adaptive skills and emotional IQ skills, really because emotional IQ or adaptive skills is a better indicator of career success than IQ.
And there's some really good news attached to that, because here's the good news. Between IQ and emotional IQ, right? Which one is pretty set in stone, and which one can you actually improve? Ethan, what do you think?
Right. You can improve your emotional IQ skills. You can't really improve your IQ, intellectual IQ.
There's a few exceptions, a little bit of wiggle room on the intelligence, but in general, your actual intelligence is kind of locked in.
Right.
Like, sorry, good luck, Ethan. You're stuck with what you got.
I will give the caveat that throughout generations, it seems that people are actually getting smarter. So that's a good news for your kids.
Okay. There's some good news. Wait. So how does that apply to you and I?
Let's move on.
Okay, so in any event, Ethan thinks he's smarter than me, but as an individual science, as an individual person, it's you don't really improve your IQ, but this is the good news, right? You can improve your emotional intelligence, and that's the thing that is more indicative. That's more. What am I trying to say?
Just in general, the observation that the human brain can churn out new neurons is one of the biggest neuroscience discoveries in the past 20 years.
It's called the elasticity of the brain, right? Mm-hmm. And here's the cool thing. We've known this for a while, for a couple decades, right? That you learn a new musical instrument, you learn a new foreign language, you really do grow gray matter in all the right places. Like, your brain is not done developing as you learn new things. And the cool thing they're finding lately, you can actually practice particular adaptive skills and practice it over and over again, and you can actually see the brain begin to change and grow gray matter around that adaptive skill, which means you're changing your default mode. What starts off as really awkward and hard to practice and uncomfortable and really challenging starts to become who you are. We say that, we call it faking it until you become it.
Absolutely. So what we do know is that our brains are amazing, right? And they can still grow new brain cells, specifically in the regions that regulate memory and emotion.
Yep.
And that's what we're talking about with emotional IQ skills. On that note, let's get into a few more of the actual emotional IQ adaptive skills. And again, when we're talking about adaptive skills, we're essentially talking about emotional IQ skills as well. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. There are so many. I say this in class often. We could spend the day just listing the skills, right? We don't do that, of course. But let me start with the top. Well, I've decided, this is not scientific. I don't have any research to back this up. Just because I've spent 2 decades working with managers, I think there's these 3 adaptive skills that I love to focus on as sort of the trifecta. These 3 adaptive skills. I love these 3 because they're so impactful on my employees, but also because these are actually learnable. You can train yourself right into these, right? Number 1, receiving feedback non-defensively is a specific skill. And just bookmark this. We're going to spend one of our podcasts talking about exactly how to do that. We're going to learn about what it looks like, what it feels like, how to change your brain around receiving feedback non-defensively.
In fact, a lot of these adaptive skills, if not all of them, will probably dedicate an episode just to that adaptive skill, because they are that important and they all have their specific characteristics.
Absolutely. Yep. Number 2 in my trifecta, which I've already mentioned this one as well, listening so the other person feels heard. That is a specific set of skills right there. So a specific set of behaviors. Mm-hmm. The third one is giving feedback, where you're telling the truth and maintaining relationship. We call that clarity with compassion.
And let's pause on that one for a second and just point out how important that is as a manager, or even just anybody in a workplace.
Yep. To
give feedback is the ability to help somebody improve in some way or form.
Yeah, help someone improve or help somebody improve a process or a practice that would make life better for everybody else.
However, if that feedback isn't delivered, let's say, correctly or using the right method or art form, the feedback's not going to stick with the person, and they're not going to improve, and that behavior is not going to change.
Absolutely, because here's the thing: a lot of people, and I've done this 1,000 times, right? You give feedback in a way that actually makes the person more defensive, right? But defensive people, Their sympathetic nervous system is kicked in. They're afraid. They're threatened, right? So they're not learning. They're not open, right? You make someone defensive by the way you give them feedback, and then wonder why they're not being open to your feedback. Doesn't make any sense. But let's list some other adaptive skills, right? Just briefly, and then I want to make sure before we close off today, I want to talk about kind of the formula, right, for improving your adaptive skills. But here's some other adaptive skills. My ability to handle my own stress and anxiety without having to leak it out on everyone around me, right?
I'll tell you what, when I teach this portion in the class, this is one that I use as an example for myself. Early on in my career, when I was promoted to be a manager at the age of, 22, 23, I did not have this skill, and I did not know I didn't have this skill for the longest time. I mean, the ability to show up and essentially not let, like you said, not let this spill out over everybody around you.
Right, where you can have a bad day, but you don't have to make sure everyone else has a bad day too.
Right, I definitely didn't have that skill. Getting better, getting a little bit better.
Oh, way better, dude. You're way better at that. Hey, another one, my ability to, this is a really deep one, and I cannot wait for the episode where we dig into this one. My ability to practice empathy, to demonstrate empathy. I fully believe that we actually have our empathy on a dimmer switch, meaning that we are able to toggle it up and down as needed. I could not go through life with my empathy switch on full blast all the time. I would be in a fetal position, right?
Right.
I couldn't handle life.
You wouldn't be able to walk downtown Seattle and keep your shit together.
Exactly. I'd just be feeling everybody's pain, and I wouldn't be able to function, right? But I also obviously can't go through life with my empathy switch on off, right? You know, can you say sociopath, right?
Right.
That's no fun, right? That's no fun. That was a stupid thing to say. But yeah, so my ability to practice empathy, my ability to have situational awareness, right? To read the room, right? To kind of have a sense of what other people are dealing with and know what my next response should be.
And is that separate from empathy?
Yeah.
Those two different skills right there?
They're related, but there's also on this one, there's some observational skills thrown in there, right?
Right.
My ability to help me out here.
Well, and we'll absolutely have an episode, if not multiple, dedicated to this. But the ability to be mindful and practice mindfulness, I definitely consider that an adaptive skill. Would you?
I would have never thought of that way. I'll have to think about
the ability to observe your thoughts without being, without jumping on the freight train of your thoughts and going with it. You know, the ability to sit back and observe them like you're sitting watching them arise.
Now that you say it that way, let me reread the very first part of my definition. The capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions.
In some ways, and this is my personal opinion, and others may disagree. I think of mindfulness as kind of the ultimate adaptive skill. With mindfulness, you can then start to recognize your strengths and deficiencies in other adaptive skills.
That's really true. And we're going to definitely spend some time in this podcast talking through mindfulness. A couple more real quick. My ability to disagree with somebody, right? Without being offensive, without being combative, still telling my truth. Right? I mean, the list just goes on, and you can appreciate now for a manager to be effective, to be approachable, to be able to solve problems, to be able to advocate for his or her employees. There is just adaptive skills woven through every single one of those characteristics.
So let me ask you, Dad, Mike,
yes,
Mr. Nash,
Ethan,
whatever you'd like to call me,
sir.
I'm actually curious, and I don't know this. What adaptive skills are you most focused on right now in your life on growing and developing and cultivating?
That's a really good question. And are you going to answer the same thing?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So let me tell you, personally, my Achilles heel. Is that
Achilles tendon?
No, it's
Achilles
not tendon.
Heel. Oh.
I broke my Achilles. I tore my Achilles tendon one time.
Okay.
No, Achilles heel, right?
Right.
Okay. Can you pour some more wine for me while I'm sharing this?
Okay, I don't think you need it.
Okay. No, for me, it is, there's many. Let's be clear about that. And a couple lesser ones, but still super important right now would be my ability to shut up and not interrupt, listening so the person feels heard. Yes. But the one right now that I'm focused on almost exclusively is just waiting. Like just not acting right this second. I do some of my best editing after I hit send, and I've had to then send 5 follow-up emails because I messed up the first 4, or I misstated something because I didn't stop and think and read, or I say something in a meeting and if I would have given myself 10 more seconds, I would have probably said it differently or said nothing. So for me, it's the ability to just stop and think and wait. Mm-hmm. Been working on that my whole life, but especially the last, I'd say 6 months, that's come up again. I've realized that I would say almost maybe 90% of the personal roadblocks that I've created for myself have been as a result of me acting or speaking too quickly.
So, you mentioned you've been working on that your whole life. Why within the last 6 months did it come up again? Was there a specific event or situation that triggered that in some way or form?
I've been practicing mindfulness now for a few years, and I've become more clear about what's true for me and what's true inside of me. And I think in the last 6 months, I've realized a couple things. One is that that really is the common denominator of most of the roadblocks that I've created for myself. It has to do with me not thinking first and acting quickly. Mm-hmm. I think also because I've actually had a couple situations in the last 6 months where I just stepped in it and I made some mistake that led to sort of a domino effect, and I went back and figured out where my mistake was, and sure enough, there it was again, right? If I would have just stopped and written something down or done a little bit of research or whatever, something that takes time, I wouldn't have had that thing slap me in the face. Mm. How about you, buddy? What's an adaptive skill that you're focused on?
Yeah, and before we go into that, I do just honestly want to say, within the last 6 months, I actually have noticed a difference with you in that regard. I think there's been situations where you chose to take some more time to think about something or to make the decision, when in the past, I think you would have jumped on a little further. So
wow.
I've seen some progress there, if I can say that.
That means a lot to me. Even if I hadn't just had 2 glasses of wine, I would be saying, I love you, buddy. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, what's interesting, and I have 2 that are kind of front and center right now, and one more or less is the opposite of what you just said. It's funny because we've talked about this before. We kind of a little bit of a yin and yang here with our business partnership, because I right now am working on just going forward and making decisions without having to have all the information with all the data. I am notorious for that paralysis by analysis, right? I need all the information. Like, I'm looking at my notes right now for this podcast, and I have like 5 pages, and it's way too much information. I'm not even using it. So and so I decided, you know what? I don't really need all this. They're in front of me, but let's just record this podcast. So that's something I'm working on.
Well, and look what happens when you do that, right? We're having this conversation that we wouldn't have had if you were using your spreadsheet, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's
exactly.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And the other thing I've been working on a lot is just learning to be more vulnerable. And I don't know, would you consider that adaptive skill? I would. I mean, and we won't go into too much detail, but this is I was given the idea through Brene Brown's work, and she has some really good work and research on the topic of vulnerability. But learning to kind of just show up authentic and being okay with expressing that, I'm hurt in some way. I need help. I don't have my shit together, right? I think for the longest time I needed to put on a front that I was Iron Man, and I'm not. So that's another adaptive skill that I've been working on a lot, and I've stumbled upon the way, but I think I'm down the right path.
That makes my heart glad, and I'm just I'm proud of you. I'm so excited to see you interested in that kind of personal growth and willing to talk about that even right here in public. I just think that you're practicing vulnerability right there in front of all 4 people that are listening to this podcast.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. I mean, this is you and me after all. But I mean, even outside of the workplace, I think you can understand why having empathy, being more vulnerable, showing up, emotionally controlled,
being non-defensive, listening well.
That affects your marriages, your partnerships, your relationship with your children, your friend. I mean, it really does affect every aspect of your life.
Absolutely. Yep.
So we're wrapping this episode up. Just because we are talking about these adaptive skills, why don't, Dad, tell them a little bit about the retreat in November? Because I know, at least partially, you're going to be talking about adaptive skills and kind of diving into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, that's. I'm really excited about this. We have an event coming up in November, and the dates are November 5th through 7th, and it's a retreat.
2019.
Yeah, 2019. This year, November 5th through 7th. It's called Leading from Within, and we're calling it a 3-day journey toward leadership greatness. This is going to be a really powerful experience. We're going to limit it to no more than 20 people. We're going to be doing some large groups, some small group, and some one-on-one work. It's going to be about recognizing the roadblocks that are keeping us from being amazing leaders. We're going to be doing some internal work. We're going to be talking about mindfulness. We're going to be doing some skill building. We're going to be doing a lot of work together to kind of deal with some of our core beliefs and our hidden attitudes that might be undermining our success. If you're interested in signing up and registering for that, go to our website, which is, Ethan?
www. That stands for World Wide Web.
They get that part.
.nashconsulting.com. So it's just nashconsulting.com. You'll be able to see some information on that retreat, which we are really excited about, and we've been working hard on getting ready for it. Also, as always, we want to be able to answer all y'all's question.
All y'all.
So if you have questions about management, about adaptive skills, if you have situations that you're dealing with in the workplace and you'd like some advice, email me. And by the way, we're not gonna share anybody's name. It'll be anonymous, so don't worry about that. So you can email me your questions or concerns or just Ethan at nashconsulting.com. That's ETHAN at nashconsulting.com. And that is all we have today, folks.
Yeah, tune in next time, though, because we're going to dig into this topic a little bit deeper.
Yeah, we're excited for the next episode. We're going to get down into the nitty gritty. Anyways, that's all.
Well, let's have some more wine.
All right. Bye.